So I'll just wait just another minute for any further colleagues to join us. But thank you for those of you coming along for this great session with Edenred. It's on public sector engagement. So a few of the things that will be covered today is, the reality of our public sector engagement. Really important that topic that we've got here. We'll hear some practical solutions of how to build trust and recognition in our daily practice. We'll also be having a look at how to design recognition and support tools to help to strengthen our relationships across the organization. And then there'll be an opportunity for you to have an open discussion, which is led by Colin Hodgson he's the commercial director for Reward Gateway and Edenred. And just as a little bit of an aside and some insight, we are actually doing work with Edenred at Hackney, who is helping us deliver a public social program where we work together in partnership to distribute financial support to vulnerable people in the community. So, I can attest to the great work that Edenred do. And I'm now going to hand over to Colin.
Thank you, Sandra, and good afternoon to everybody. So welcome and thanks for joining us. Today, I'm going to share findings from our new research into public sector employee engagement, and I'm going to discuss some practical solutions to the challenges that the research that we've conducted reveals. And though the challenges are many, our theme today is quite simple: making a difference for the people who make a difference. If we could move to the next slide, please. So why this research? Why now? The public sector is and always has been powered by purpose-driven people. Whilst digital services are driving changes to processes and interactions, people are still, in effect, the system. They turn up every day to serve their communities, often in incredibly challenging circumstances. But our research highlights a warning sign. People remain committed to their work, but despite the best endeavours of themselves and their teams, they are under strain. People are exhausted, they're under-supported, and increasingly they are detached from their organisations. And the challenges are increasing amid rising expectations, budget cuts, workforce shortages, and structural reforms. So if engagement and employee engagement doesn't evolve now, with more trust, better well-being support, and recognition that feels truly personal, there is a real risk of losing the people that our public services depend upon. We could move to the next slide, please. Thank you. Initially, we interviewed 10 senior HR leaders across the public sector to gather their valuable perspectives, with insights then used to shape the research. And the bedrock of this research is the quantitative insight that we gained from more than 1,100 employees who responded to the survey. Employees from local government, central government, education, health, and emergency services. So what did the research say and what are the key findings? Next slide, please. Firstly, employees remain mission-driven, but they're overwhelmed. 4 out of 5 employees are engaged with their mission, but over half of those employees say the workload is their number one challenge. And there's a trust gap. 69% say leaders talk about engagement, but don't follow through on that. Loyalty is directed at the role and not the organisation. 64% of employees are more committed to their job and the outcomes they deliver than they are to their employer. And that's because employees feel underappreciated. 93%, that's 9 in 10, are saying appreciation matters, but they don't feel recognised and they don't feel appreciated. Crucially, 77% are saying that recognition improves their performance, and 39% say recognition means they perform much better. What this tells us is that it isn't so much about grand gestures. It's about the everyday acknowledgement, practical support, and consistent communication that informs people that they do matter. What it also indicates is that appreciation in greater measures would improve performance and hence improve the outcomes for the communities and the people that they serve. Now, this is really important because pay rises aside, this is the thing that they care most about. We can move to the next slide, please. One of the strongest messages from the research is that there is no single public sector experience. Engagement must be personalised. For example, emergency services show the highest signs of distress, with 3/4 of employees reporting that their workload pressures are impacting on burnout, and 2/3 specifically cite burnout. In education, staff are deeply committed to their students, but they're disengaged from their organisations, and only 13% say they feel engaged with their employer. Central government shows relatively stronger engagement, but here, career development is the big ask. And I'm aware that many of you may be from local government, so it's worth noting that there are no discernible differences in the general data and from the statistics that I've shared on the previous slide, with the experiences of individuals and the respondents who work in the local government sector. If we could move to the next slide, please. There are also generational and gender divides. Young workers are far more optimistic. Mid-career staff, the most disillusioned, and women report higher burnout than men. So all of this reinforces the fact that a one-size-fits-all approach simply does not work. We can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So, where does this leave us? Despite good intentions and much hard work, many of the engagement efforts are simply not landing. 47%, so almost half of employees, say current engagement initiatives are just not meaningful. Often, programs are considered generic, or they're disconnected from the everyday working life. This was also reflected in the views of the HR leaders we spoke to. A significant number reported still being in the early communications phase, trying to drive adoption of benefits and well-being schemes, often starting from a very, very low base. And with some exceptions, this comms focus comes at the expense of any data analysis and any usage stats, which ultimately allow organizations to refine and to improve personalization. Therefore, the fact remains there is a real sense of frustration. Untargeted investment and missed opportunities from both sides. Inevitably, like with many things, there's no silver bullet that addresses everything. But at least part of the solution is to embed employee engagement into the daily flow of work and to make it personal to the different roles and the groups within your organisation. Next slide, please. So, how do we make a difference in the lives of the people that make a difference? Well, there are three clear areas to be addressed and ramped up. Firstly, a recognition culture that feels real. It must be authentic. It must be everyday. It must be appreciation led. And that means it's not just about annual awards. Secondly, we have to focus on well-being that builds resilience. We have to make it visible, accessible, and proactive. And thirdly, we have to provide benefits that meet real needs. The cost of living crisis continues, inflationary impact on grocery and food. So we're talking here about financial security, about family support, about flexibility and future planning. Practical solutions designed around your colleagues' lives and the challenges that they face. How do we achieve that? Well, the key is to move from insight into action. And that means tailoring solutions to your sector and to your people. It means understanding the needs of your people. It means centralizing and simplifying access to benefit packages. So often we hear from organizations who have different benefits with different providers that are accessed from different places. And these are fragmented systems that mean it's not easy to access. We have to adopt unified solutions and consolidated programs that make access to these services and benefits easy. Everything in one place. We have to test and learn by piloting new approaches in high pressure teams. We need to leverage and use success stories. There will be advocates within your excuse me. There will be advocates within your organization, and we should be using their success stories and their experiences of the benefits and the services that are available to create greater awareness within the organization. And we have to embed what works into everyday operations. Engagement strategies must evolve from a simple tick box exercise. They have to become dynamic drivers of culture, well-being, and performance. Your engagement strategy should be a key component of your employee value proposition. And of course, we have to have a very, very strong communications program, a communication program that people can access and that reaches people in the places where they work. We need to use data insights and analysis to deliver targeted messages and improve response rates. We need to look at where within the organization there is good adoption and poor adoption, and we need to deliver targeted messages and sessions to engage those audiences. Now, we're well aware that budgets and resources are tight. So it's vital that complex administrative processes are streamlined to realize efficiencies. And there are practical and simple tools to help you do that without building out new teams. Excuse me. We could take the next slide, please. So at this point, I'd like to turn to you for your observations and thoughts. And of course, if you'd like, I'm happy to discuss how solutions to challenges that you face on a day-to-day basis could be addressed and to work in practice. And I think we are moving to the next slide for any Q&A. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, or if possible, come off mute, and I'm happy to answer anything that any queries.
Col-
Oh, Sandra, I think we've lost your sound. I can't hear you.
No? Oh.
Oh, you're back in. There you are. Got you.
Okay, so apologies and apologies, colleagues. I'm not sure why my sound was lost there, but I don't have a hand on Zoom either, so I'm actually jumping in there. It might sound a bit rude, but I'm not going to be able to contribute without that. Please do, if anybody wants to and experience the same challenge I've got, then please just jump in. Um, if you don't mind, if I could just start on some of those kind of observation things, because actually it did make me think quite a lot, going through all of that. One of the things is around, the size of an organization, how that can make it really complex to be doing engagement where, colleagues feel listened to, supported, and we've got the right responses to the outcomes of of the survey. I think also one of my personal observations is that the language that we use in our surveys, it means different things to different people. And that can quite, I guess it's got the potential to significantly impact on the responses that you get. When I see surveys and you see either, scores go up or scores go down, can you really say how, why, or what from the outcomes of maybe more broader surveys? So that's just one kind of thought. The other thing is around, do we have the equipment that's fit for purpose to do that, to make everybody feel engaged? There's a tendency for colleagues to look upwards and say, where's the corporate leadership team? Where's the director of the service? I'll be in that category. So it's a bit of a complex thing because actually it's all of our collective responsibility. It can't rely on just one person because that one person is equally, I guess, a bit susceptible to the burnout and all of those things because you can't be everywhere. So, and then it's about the implementation timescales of doing something different, which of course includes all those things like communications. So I don't think I've answered anything. I'm just kind of giving a view of some of the observations in relation to engagement, because when you are um, really committed to listening to the voices of colleagues around your within your environment, um, it's not the easiest thing to kind of have that understood. So yeah, that was just one of my observations, but please others do jump in.
Yeah, that's fair. Um, Scale clearly brings complexity. Scale brings many, many challenges. Ultimately, what we see today is that technology, app-based technology, technology that is, for example, secure, meets all of the necessary security accreditations, has features like MFA multi-factor authentication for to enhance that security, but is also WCAG 2.2 AA compliant, means that it becomes easier to access. Now, I appreciate that not everybody within the workforce will have, for example, a work mobile phone, but equally, the vast majority of the UK population, and I don't know the exact statistic, but 95+% of people now have smartphones. And so this is about implementing services that people want to interact with. From a recognition perspective, embedding corporate values, organization core values, and behaviors within a recognition program, and then making that recognition program accessible to all, so that one colleague can recognize another colleague on the ground whilst creating the visibility centrally within the organization to see how employees interact with values, recognize cross-functionally, not just locally within their own teams, starts to give you the kind of insights that become important. Though inevitably will be champions within your organization, advocates will naturally emerge. People who already within your organization do recognition well, but they're doing it locally and they're doing it off their own back. And you have no visibility of this today, particularly in a large organization. So we're working with organizations of all scale and size, from SMB, sub 500 employees, right through to giant organizations, transport organizations with upwards of 27,000 employees, government departments with up of 60, 80, 90,000 employees who are doing recognition well. And those recognition programs are embedded within the organization. Now, that's not a simple thing to achieve. It requires time, effort, it requires the right design, and it then requires a commitment. And it's a top-down commitment, because that's what then fosters that level of engagement. Because when employees start to see that the leadership and the exec team and heads of departments and teams are bought into recognition programs, that sense of engagement and interaction starts to foster and it starts to generate. And that's where it becomes important. Now, if we don't recognize the importance of recognition, a few stats from some recent research that we did. Recognition is not just about recognizing. Recognition is recognizing someone is valuable and important for them as a person, not just for the work that they do. Transactional recognition rewards, well, they're recognizing the output. The difference between recognition and appreciation is where we don't just recognize the action and the output, but we recognize the employee for who they truly are. The Haas School of Business found that whilst recognition boosts productivity by 23%, changing that recognition into appreciation, and that means recognizing the person, not just the action and the output, well, that increases the productivity by a further 43%. So that nearly doubles the impact. So valuing the role, but also the person, then drives that productivity, and it starts to create a more resilient and high performing environment for the people to thrive.
Does any other colleague want to come in with a question for Colin while we've got him here?
Yeah, can I come in with something, Sandra, if that's okay?
Sure.
So thanks for that, Colin. We're at a bit of a crossroads at the moment. So we've recently done our big staff awards, and as you've already mentioned, kind of the pitfalls within that, and I've done my own research, which is bringing me away from that heroism, I guess, for want of a better word. You touched on those maybe silo parts of the organisation that do recognition really well, and it feels really genuine. Have you found any barriers when you've got that silo recognition, which then suddenly has to be put on the company platform for recognition, that it maybe loses some of that authenticity, and you find colleagues associate it with almost a token gesture of, oh, we need to get this many mentioned globally, rather than that local, sometimes more intimate recognition, I guess?
Not so much barriers. I mean, the beauty of a recognition culture and a recognition platform is that it's providing the tools to those areas of the business who are already doing it well and delivering authentic recognition. What it does is it creates those champions, it creates those advocates, and it creates those success stories that then allow you to take what's happening really well and showcase it across an organization. It allows other managers, other areas of the business who are maybe doing some recognition, but maybe doing it a little bit more infrequently, to start to recognize and to see differences and opportunities to improve. Recognition platforms have the ability to distribute a digital e-card linked to your value. So it's capturing the stories. Those recognition e-cards can be sent privately. So you can still manage that authentically and in person locally, whilst also publicising, because quite often some of the actions and some of the outputs from individuals and some of the discretionary effort is something that more and more people within the organization should be aware of. And what happens is it starts to raise benchmark, it starts to raise the standards, and other people recognize, and that's where recognition can foster from the ground up.
Fab, thank you for that.
No problem.
Thank you, Mike. Any further comments? I mean, I put a couple of comments in the chat, Colin, but I'll leave some space for colleagues. Jump in, please. If not, I will address the question that I've put in the chat. And it really is a case of when you are celebrating successes, etc. There are people, just like Mike was talking about, where you do your awards and there's these big things that people have done and truly deserved of that recognition. But you've got some areas of services where absolutely excellence is demonstrated by everything just working well. So and then that happens on the front for frontline workers as well. And so I think part of the challenge could be that when you've got platforms or you're doing recognition, some colleagues who are actually really are delivering excellence, but it's kind of nothing particularly different to share. I don't know if that makes sense, because it's certainly valued. There are hidden excellence within our working environment, and actually the numbers of people delivering excellence in that way are really high. So
Yeah.
I guess the question is there, platform or otherwise, something that we could start to think about doing? Because when you think about an implementation of an app over, quite a large workforce, that's not so it's something that of course we can do, but what do we do in the meantime to start that journey around people feeling more recognized? Because there can be a little frustration with you wanting to do that, understanding so far as you can from surveys, but then having to really try and work on how do you support everybody feeling seen and valued.
Sure.
Thank you.
I mean, ultimately, if there is research that's been conducted within the organization, then it's identifying the pains as well as the successes to understand what areas need to be improved and what areas need to be fostered and enhanced and still have a place. A couple of points to make here. We're working with SaaS software. So this isn't a bespoke build solution. This is a configurable application. And because of that, it's an implementation that can be done within 2 to 3 months. And it's an implementation that ultimately is the organization's platform. It would have a theme, an identity, a brand, if you like, something that complements the values of the organization and would speak to the tone and the language that's used commonly within the organization. It would incorporate your core values and the behaviors that you've already seen within the data that are present within the organization, and maybe also highlight some of the values and the behaviors that don't necessarily or are not necessarily as well embedded. And it would talk to the challenges and create that platform and the opportunity. Probably the biggest and most important point here is that recognition is not predicated on any financial reward. Okay, so where we're talking about a peer-to-peer recognition program, why shouldn't one individual be able to recognize a colleague? That doesn't have to have a monetary reward attached to it. You may have financial budgets within your organization. They can sit at a level of the hierarchy that you deem relevant. And managers can then issue instant recognition or with or without financial reward attached to it. So we're talking where we detach recognition from finance and reward and payments to individuals, we are really starting to get to the heart of the matter, which is that culture, which is colleagues recognizing one another. And quite often that is where we then start to see the true aspect of appreciation, because it's the colleagues on the ground working with one another that know the sacrifices that somebody has made. Does that answer your question, Sandra?
Yeah, that's a good answer. Thank you very much, Colin.
Thank you.
I just wanted to check with Donna whether you'd like to. There's a question in the chat if you want to come in, or would you like me to just I'll say ask Colin on your behalf, Donna. Okay, I'll take that as a I'll ask. Donna has asked, how best is it to proceed to show appreciation? Oh, no problem, Donna, noted. She's in a busy office, so we wouldn't probably want the background noise and things like that as well. So thank you so much for your question. How best is it to proceed to show appreciation and recognition to employees at the same time as, there's a lot of us going through transformation. That's not what Donna says, but it's, this is a fact for us.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is about targeting changes to the way that we work and potentially, reduction within the workforce. So how do we do recognition at the same time as some colleagues are actually being made redundant? And actually, what do we take? So I'm going to add a little bit on here. What do we take from the survey results when there is such a lot of change and churn and new information that does impact on engagement surveys and outcomes as well? Thank you, Colin.
Yeah. And that's clearly a very tough time within the organization where transformational change and potentially reduction in headcount and redundancies, clearly that creates a lot of fear, concern, and worry for individuals. So if there is an existing recognition platform in place and there are existing recognition activities, then clearly recognition must be sensitive to the situation the individuals find themselves within. If there is no recognition program, then clearly the time to launch one is after that consultation process and that organizational change has happened, because that's an opportunity to reset. That's an opportunity to reach out to employees, to recognize what has happened, and then start to rebuild and to move the culture and start to drive the engagement. Because clearly at that point, post the consultation and post colleagues having left the organization, that's at a time where people feel most stressful, most worried about their position, and starting to wonder about, is there another process to start again 6-12 months down the line? This is a time where productivity and driving engagement and rebuilding the confidence within the organization becomes really, really important and really powerful. No problem, Donna. Sorry, Sandra, your sound's dipped again.
Ooh.
Oh, you're back. There you are.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what's happening there. Was any other colleagues like to sort of raise any points, ask Colin any questions, give a view from the perspective of your organization as well?
If there's no other questions, the one question I am often asked is, clearly, how do we convince senior leaders and the exec that engagement is not just a nice to have? Clearly, organizational change, transformation programs, budgets being tight, etc. There is industry research, for example, Gallup, that points to the fact that the cost to replace employees where there is voluntary attrition and employee turnover, then the cost to replace employees is very significant. Now, conservatively, the research shows it costs around 6 to 9 months of an employee's average salary to replace somebody. Gallup's data shows that to be much, much higher, somewhere between 40 and 200% of an employee's salary. So the impact in productivity is very significant. Research published by Bercy on behalf of Deloitte found that companies that have effective recognition and appreciation programs will have a 31% lower voluntary turnover rate. So outside of transformational change and redundancy programs, a stable organization, noting the feedback from the survey and the analysis from the survey in terms of how employees feel or how they're engaged with organizations, clearly that is an indicator of potential voluntary turnover. So where we can implement a very strong cultural recognition program that drives appreciation, then that can improve and lower voluntary turnover by some 30%. So powerful data that ultimately helps formulate a business case.
Colin, can I ask another question then?
Of course.
So, in relation to that engagement, we talked about the surveys, which is usually 6 monthly, maybe, or your annual survey, or even a biannual survey, dependent on the organization. But this kind of approach using the app or software, would you still do those 6 monthly surveys, 12 monthly, or is that all something that's embedded into the application? Yeah, because
Yeah, so we have survey software and we have survey partners that we can integrate. But equally, if you've already got a program of research and employee engagement and satisfaction surveys that exists, you don't necessarily need to change that. It's about how do you use the data and the insights and how do you track the trends over time from that data to ultimately feed into and evolve what we're doing from a recognition and employee engagement perspective. We've talked a lot about engagement and recognition here. One of the slides pointed to things like the power of employee benefits too. A hub should incorporate employee benefits, access to maybe salary sacrifice schemes such as cycle to work or electric cars. These are all benefits that also contribute and help employees address the financial pressures. Services that allow employees to access maybe health cash plans or dental insurance plans can be integrated within a program. The provision of a discount scheme that allows employees to save money on the everyday, discounts at grocery stores, discounts at fashion, whatever it may well be, holidays, all allows employees to stretch their own salaries at a time where budgets and pay reviews are constantly under pressure. So a true engagement strategy incorporates recognition, it incorporates employee benefits, well-being services, and a discount program.
Thank you very much, Colin. Well, back to my colleagues for any kind of final views, questions, probes. Please do, if there's any burning questions. No? Colin, shall I bring our PPMA in Grace? Do you want to come in, Grace? Or okay. So it definitely has been really great and informative session. I think it's certainly triggered quite a lot of thought in my mind about how to address some of the challenges. I think the answer, Colin, around the timing of when to do this kind of change, the question from Donna was actually quite significant because I think what you said speaks to the fact that, you know, we can expect some of the disengagement, if you like, or scores to drop during significant times of change. But let's be hopeful about that, because actually we need to turn that corner and be ready to, you know, help and support, yes, through it and then beyond it as well. So that's really, really been helpful to hear.
Absolutely. No problem at all. Really enjoyed the session. I know that Grace has said that she will circulate a recording of this as well as a copy of the slides. On the final slide, there is a QR code, and the QR code will give you access to download the survey data and the report and the findings. So please feel free to download that report, digest it. Inevitably, there may be more questions that you have after that. Feel free to contact me directly. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm sure Grace will also circulate my contact details too.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I think it's been a brilliant session. Thank you, Colin. It's really informative, and I hope that everybody has a wonderful weekend. It's ended on a very good, informative note, Colin. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it. Have a great
Thank
day
you,
and a lovely
everybody.
weekend.